Okay, so I've started. People are starting to come in. Hi, everyone. Lots of people coming in. If you'd like to pop in the chat where you're joining from, that would be really nice to see. And we'll just give it another minute or so for everybody to join. Lots of people coming from all around the world. Hi, welcome. Okay, so maybe we can get started now. So yeah, let's start. So welcome everybody. Welcome to today's session, which is getting to know the global scale of English, the ultimate map and compass for every learning journey. And today we'll be hearing from Mike Mayer. Mike is Director for Learning, Research and Design for English at Pearson. On leaving university, Mike worked as a teacher of English in France before entering the world of publishing as a lexicographer. Mike joined Pearson in 2003, heading up the Longman Dictionaries list until his move to the global scale of English in 2013. In this role, Mike works with content and assessment teams to ensure that global scale of English learning objectives underpin all new products and services at Pearson English. So before we get started, just a few points of housekeeping. We'll be having a short Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. So please feel free to submit your questions in the questions box at any time, and we will ask Mike at the end. We'll try to get through as many of your questions as possible. Certificates of attendance will be sent out at the end of this week. And finally, the webinar will be recorded and available shortly after the session in case you'd like to watch it again or share it with your colleagues. And now I'm very happy to pass it over to Mike.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I see we've got a wide range of people from around the world. Thank you for taking the time to join us. Oops, I am trying to get rid of looking at my image on the screen. There, I've disappeared now. As Sophia said, I head up English Learning, Research and Design at Pearson, and I'm really happy today to be with you to introduce you a bit to the global scale of English. So here we are. It's summer. I look at the calendar. It's July. That means, in theory, it's summer in Europe, even if the weather doesn't always agree with us. I'm based in South London, for any of you who are interested. But anyway, let's pretend it's summer. And if I'm honest, the concept of a summer camp when I was growing up in the 1960s and 70s didn't really exist in British culture. We didn't have summer camps. For me, summer meant going to the coast, going to the seaside, being in the deck chairs, getting to play on the beach, being in the sea, very different from my hometown in the northwest of England. And so traditionally, you'd take a 2-week break, you'd pop the kids in the back of the car, strap everybody in, set off. About 30 minutes into your journey, you would hear those immortal words, "Are we there yet?" Obviously, for kids in a car, half an hour feels like a long time, and they get impatient. They just want to be at the seaside. So, "Are we there yet?" is a bit of a standing joke in British English. So there's a little cultural reference for you to throw into your student conversations. Now, for me, living in the north of England, summer holidays meant going to the south coast to a place called Bournemouth, which actually is the place where Sophia grew up. For her, it's a hometown. For me, it was paradise. It was the south, so the weather was better than it was in the north. It was by the sea. There was a beach. It really was my idea of paradise. Nobody traveled abroad in those days. Most people, well, everybody I knew holidayed in the UK. And so as we're setting out on the journey, obviously we need to plan the journey, and clearly we had our destination. It was Bournemouth. Okay. As we're planning, there are a number of questions we're going to ask ourselves, like, how long is it going to take to get to Bournemouth? When do we have to set off? We know that we can't check into the hotel before 2 o'clock. So how much time do we need to leave? What's the best route to get if we're driving or maybe taking public transport? But what's the best route to get from Preston, which was my hometown, to Paradise, which was Bournemouth? And when we've got an idea of the direction, then we want to know, well, where do I have to go first? What roads do I have to take? Where do I have to, what do I do at this junction, etc., etc., etc. And again, back in the 60s and 70s, we obviously had paper maps. Today, much easier. We just Google the route. And as you can see there, Preston, Bournemouth, 4 hours, 40 minutes. I have to say, when I was a child, it felt much longer than that. And possibly the roads have improved since then. But I'm pretty sure we took a lot longer than 4.5 hours to get to Bournemouth. And then you can click on, directions, and it will give you a list of the clear directions, what you do first, what you do next, what you do after that. Obviously, no journey is absolutely problem-free. There may be accidents, there may be roadworks, and so you sometimes have to take a diversion. But most of us now have GPS in the car, and it will recalculate the route, and it's going to get you back onto the right path to get to your destination. Where am I going with all of this? Well, I think that actually planning your learning journey is pretty similar to planning a physical journey. Now, I know that a lot of you have found the chat function, because I can see there are people from all over the world saying hello in chat. What I'd like you to put into chat now is thinking about your students, your learners. What are their end goals? Why are they learning English? What is their motivation for learning English? Where do they want to go with English? If you could just pop your answers into the chat. I've got the chat open on my phone so I can see what we're doing. So I've got going to university, better communication. They want to be able to speak with colleagues at work, study abroad, sing and understand songs. They want to travel around the world. Okay, well, I can't keep up. You're typing too fast for me. These were just some of the ones that I put up with, and I think that you have also suggested. Students want to study abroad. They want to work for a multinational company where English is the form of communication. They want to live abroad, so they want to go for, to emigrate to an English-speaking country. And, maybe they're not super motivated. Maybe they're still in, the K-12 system, but they want to pass their exam at the end of the year because English is compulsory. So those are just some of the goals. And, similarly to the journey, they're going to have questions. So same format. Can you suggest in the chat box maybe some of the questions that they have about getting there? Let's see what suggestions you've got. Seeing anything at the moment? What questions would you have? What do I need to get an A? Great question. Yes. Do I have to take an exam? Okay. Any more suggestions? What books should I use? I wonder if Pearson offers free online courses. Okay, some of the questions, they were quite different actually to some of the questions I came up with. So for example, how good is my English? What's my starting point? Where am I in my English learning journey? And how good does my English need to be in order to emigrate to Australia or in order to study at a university abroad? What do I need to do next? Like, I'm here, how do I move to the next level of proficiency? What are the steps on my journey to my end goal? And then kind of fundamental, I think, and one of the big questions is, am I making progress? Am I making progress? It's really hard sometimes to understand that you are making progress. And how long is it going to take? Before I've got this goal, I'm here. How many years is it going to take me to achieve that goal? And really thinking about these types of questions led us to develop the global scale of English. And that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about today, is how the global scale of English can help you and can help you to help your learners answer some of these questions. So let's have a quick overview of what exactly the global scale of English is. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Common European Framework. So published in 2001, this really has become the standard for learning, teaching, and assessing languages around the world, not just English, all European languages. And I don't want to underestimate the influence that the Common European Framework has had on teaching and assessing English. But, like most things that have been super successful, people start finding issues with it, and it's doesn't seem to exactly be right for what they want. And as part of developing the global scale of English, what we've tried to do is address some of the limitations that have been leveled against the Common European Framework. And you can see a few of those on your screen there. So Common European Framework was developed for adults and young adults, so kind of 15, 16 years and older. It was never intended for young learners. And I know many publishers and assessment organizations have used the Common European Framework for young learners, have tried to adapt it for young learners. But if we've got anybody on the webinar today who teaches young learners, you know that actually the reality of learning English for a young learner is quite different to that of an adult. They're not really going out into the real world using their English. Their frame of reference is really the classroom and interactions with their classmates and with the teacher. So quite a different context for learning English in. The Common European Framework is focused mainly on general English communication, which is fine. It's fine unless you want to prepare a course, if you want to assess a student in business English or in academic English, then you're going to struggle a little bit with the information in the Common European Framework. Those are just two domains contained in the Common European Framework. There's not really enough information there to really build out full courses of specific skills related to work and to study. If you know the Common European Framework intimately, you're probably aware that most of the information really focuses on speaking, and it focuses on speaking around the B1, B2 levels. So if you're trying to plan a lesson or measure progress in, say, writing at an A1 level, there's very, very little information in the Common European Framework that will be useful to you. And one of the key challenges is how, as I mentioned in the previous slide, how do I know I'm making progress? How do I measure progress as a teacher? How do I give tangible evidence to my learners that they're making progress? And if you're using Common European Framework levels, so A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2, that's going to be quite challenging. And I'm going to look at that in a moment in a bit more detail, but it's difficult to show regular progress when you've only got 6 reference points. And what we were finding was that teachers they knew Common European Framework, meaning they knew A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2, but it was really difficult for them to actually put it into practice in the classroom because that book is quite academic and it's quite difficult to use. So we wanted to develop some tools that really made it easy for teachers to access the information, the really valuable information that's in Common European Framework. And so that was part of our Global Scale of English project as well. So here we have two little diagrams. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see the Global Scale of English, which is a scale from 10 to 90. You can also see there the Common European Framework levels from pre-A1, A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2, including what we call the plus levels or the higher levels, A2, A2 plus, B1, B1 plus, B2, B2 plus. Okay, and as you can see, that diagram shows that the Global Scale of English is aligned to the Common European Framework. So far, so good. Move over to the other table, and you can see in that column with Logit that you can see some numbers from 3.8 at the top down to minus 5.39. That information comes from the original research carried out for the Common European Framework. So obviously this is an academic study, hence the complexity of the numbers, and it goes through various psychometric analyses. Don't need to worry about that. The point I want to make here is that the Global Scale of English is the same scale as the Common European Framework. It's just been taken back to the numerical scale that was originally there and transposed onto a 10 to 90 proficiency scale. So in the original research, minus 3.23 is exactly the same as 30 on the Global Scale of English, which is exactly the same as the very beginning of A2. So I'm sure you'd agree, telling a student that they're minus 3.23 is not terribly motivating, which is why we have this positive scale from 10 to 90. But it's the same scale. If you remember nothing else from today's presentation, remember it's the same scale. And if you're already familiar with Common European Framework and you're using Common European Framework, that doesn't mean you can't also use the Global Scale of English, because what the Global Scale of English will do is give you greater insight into where within a level your students are. Now, back on the chat, I've got a problem for you. You've got a new class of 30 students. You've given them a placement test and you have 10 students who are A1, you have 10 students who are A2, and you have 10 students who are B1. You can only create 2 groups. How do you divide your students into 2 groups? Any suggestions into the chat? It's not a trick question, although it is a little bit tricky. But how would you, faced with that, divide those students? You'd mix them, okay, you'd mix them into mixed levels. Okay. Heterogeneous groups. Would mix A2 and B1 and keep the A1 separate. Okay, some great answers, all of which I'm sure you've had to implement in your institutions already. The point I want to make is that, you know, A2, any of the CFR levels cover a range of proficiency. So A2 covers proficiency from low A2 to high A2. Okay, so if you've got 2 groups, you might decide, okay, A1 and all those students who are like at the bottom of A2, they can successfully go into one group, and the ones who are high A2 can go into the B1 group. Because if you look at that chart on your screens now, student 2 and student 3 are much closer in proficiency level to student 1 and student 2, even though 1 and 2 are testing as A2. So that's the point I was trying to make around, you can get a bit more detail within a common European framework level if you're using that numerical scale from 10 to 90. Okay, next question. No chance for sleeping today, I'm afraid. How many hours does it take to move a learner from the bottom of B1 to the bottom of B2? So moving from B1 to B2, but covering the whole of B1. And the conditions here are, this is a learner with a European language, so similar to English. It's not a very different, like an Asian language or Russian language or Greek language with different alphabets. This is similar to English. The student is motivated and they're getting regular exposure to English. All of those factors play into the amount of time it takes to make progress. So I'm seeing a couple of hundred, I'm seeing 100, I'm seeing about 400. I think most people are saying about 100 or 200. Okay, well, nobody said 1,000, so I guess that's good. So actually, the research, and this research paper you will find on our website, and you will be getting links to all the resources in your goodie bag. It suggests that for this motivated learner, it can take about 400 hours. The other learner there, depicted with this little snail, that's over 1,000 hours, and that is if you have, a very different language, you're not motivated, and you only have 1 or 2 hours of English a week. Often when I ask this question at conferences and said, how long will it take a learner to get to B2? If they have that profile, many teachers say they won't. They'll never get there. It's a pointless question because they are never going to get to that to B2 if they have that profile. Again, if you use the global scale of English, which is this numerical scale, it will enable you to demonstrate progress within a common European framework level. So if we take that B1 student, after 70 hours, you have a greater chance of showing that they've made 3 points progress on global scale of English. Obviously, these are all averages, okay? So this is not a precise number or a precise amount, but averages out. 70 hours, you can show you're B1, but you're 43. You're B1, you're 46. You're B1, you're 49. You're B1, you're 52. As a learner, you can see that, okay, I am still B1, but I'm not the same B1. And as a teacher, your learner is not the same B1. You can see that they have improved in proficiency, but they're not quite good enough for them to be able to say they're B2. And so this is really coming from the motivational aspect of creating the global scale of English to motivate learners to really stay the course. As teachers, there's no miracle to learning English. It's just hard work, and you just have to keep on at it again and again and again. To address some of those other limitations with the Common European Framework, we created additional learning objectives, and we followed a very similar methodology to the Common European Framework in that it's all based on teacher ratings. So teachers like yourselves from over 50 countries around the world all participated in research projects to decide the difficulty level of new learning objectives. And every teacher feels this is a very subjective decision. But when you collect enough data together and you have agreement between teachers in Mexico and Poland and Ukraine and Japan, then you can start to say, well, this is a globally perceived difficulty level for this particular language function. So where we have over 75% agreement, we add it to our databases. Where teachers can't agree, it's rejected. So all the information that will be shared with you after this, it's all been validated by teachers of English from around the world. Over 75% of those teachers agreed on that level. And so this is what we've created. We've extended the Common European Framework, so a fuller, more complete set of learning objectives for adult learners learning general English. We have a set for adult learners learning academic English, which also contains all of the general adult as well, because usually on an academic English course, you still teach general language functions as well. We've got a set for business English, for professional English. And again, any professional English course covers some of the general language functions as well. And then a completely separate set for young learners. So this is targeting 6 to 14-year-olds, so people who are learning in a primary and lower secondary education. And again, all of these, they're freely available on the website. You can see the URL at the bottom of your screen, pearsonenglish.com/GSE. And what you'll find in these brochures, in these PDFs, is simply lists of learning objectives divided by skill, so reading, listening, speaking, writing, divided by Common European Framework level, including A2, A2+, B1, B1+, B2, B2+, and then within those categories broken down by Global Scale of English point, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55. And so these are sets of frameworks of learning objectives that can help teachers, can help you with lesson planning, curriculum development, and you can use them to monitor progress as well. Those are static PDFs. I'll come on a little bit later to talk about a database that we have. Again, same website, pearsonenglish.com/GSE, and again, free for you to access. So you don't even have to register. All of this information is included in a searchable database. And I will go on to talk a little bit about that in a few moments. So if we think about the learning cycle, a typical learning cycle, so we've placed our students, we've got those two groups, and then as a teacher, you're going to plan your lessons, your curriculum, you then teach it, hopefully students learn it, but as the truism goes, just because you teach doesn't mean they learn. So you're constantly having to check. And if it looks like they haven't understood or they haven't mastered a particular language point, then you repair or you remediate, you go back and do it again. And then, you get to the end of the year or regular intervals within the year and you do an assessment and, following good practice, the results should then inform your next plan. And so we go on this circle. And within Pearson, we have created the Global Scale of English to support all the different points on that learning cycle. So you have the learning objectives to help you with the planning. You have the courseware, all of which is aligned to the Global Scale of English to help with the teaching. And then you have the assessment parts, which are also aligned to the Global Scale of English. We'll give Global Scale of English scores. And as I show you on this slide, so there we have the planning with the learning objectives, teaching with the materials, checking with the proficiency exams. Those proficiency exams will give you reports which will itemize problem areas and give you some information on how to repair those problem areas. And I'll show you that in a bit more detail later as well. And then higher certification if your students want to have a certificate to demonstrate their proficiency in English. So the Global Scale of English has been developed really to support what is generally considered a best practice teaching, learning, and assessment cycle. It has been created by Pearson. We use it at Pearson. There is no reason why everybody can't use it, even if you're not using Pearson products and services. Shocking, but of course there are people who don't use Pearson products and services. But I just wanted to show you this to say, oh, you know, he's from Pearson, he's talking about it. Obviously, he thinks it's a good thing. I just wanted to emphasize that actually this has been supported by the Council of Europe, so the people who developed the Common European Framework. And you may be aware that in 2017, Common European Framework published a companion volume, so additional can-do statements, learning objectives. And as part of that, they have included around 50 global scale of English learning objectives in that companion volume. So, you know, they see it as being as robust as the Common European Framework itself. And then around the world, so if you're in Europe, you might be familiar with Equals. If you're in Asia or Australia, NIAS. And if you're over America, Latin America, possibly ASSET. These are quality assurance institutions who will come in and accredit English courses, and your school, your institution. They also call out global scale of English as a recognized standard to show that your courses have been robustly constructed. Okay, so learning objectives, how we set goals and what we understand by progress. So back on the chat, these are some of the things I've heard from teachers around the world on how they use learning objectives. If you just want to type in a little letter or two as any of these things that you yourselves use learning objectives for: planning lessons, building curriculum, sharing with learners, assessment, monitoring progress. Maybe none of that, maybe something else, maybe all of that. I'm seeing AD&E, planning lessons, assessing, monitoring progress, all A&D, assessing, planning lessons. Okay, so it seems like at least the people on chat are already using learning objectives. So hopefully once you start using the Global Scale of English database, that will help you and make your lives easier in actually just even the effort of wording learning objectives for particular language functions. I know it's not always easy. This researcher, John Hattie from Australia, has done a fair bit of research into the value of learning objectives and feedback and formative assessment. And he carried out studies that demonstrated sharing the learning objectives with your students can actually have a direct impact on how successful they are in meeting that learning goal. So just something to bear in mind if you're not currently sharing your learning objectives with students, and you know, maybe at a lower level of proficiency or a younger learner, for younger learners, you might want to translate them into their first language. Just that the concept of knowing why I'm here, what I'm doing, has a direct impact on the outcome of the lesson. And when you're setting goals, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the acronym SMART. We want to make these goals SMART. So specific, they need to be measurable so that you can see whether or not they've been reached. Achievable and realistic, and you need to know, you know, how much time it's going to take to master a particular goal. So using the Global Scale of English, I think this can help you with a lot of that that setting of SMART goals. So if you place your students at the beginning of the year, so here's my student placed at GSE 28, which is kind of the top of A1, and I know that My director of studies has said that they need to get to kind of mid A2 plus by the end of the year. We won't discuss how realistic or unrealistic those goals are, but let's just go with it. This is where we need to get our students by the end of the year. We can then do searches in the toolkit for learning objectives in that kind of 32 to 38 range. So if my learner's at 28, there's no point me keep teaching them at 28. Okay, they'll look like they're doing a great job and they're really mastering English, but they're constantly at 28. What you need to do is you need to be stretching your learners just within an achievable range. And so this, within the research science, is something known as the zone of proximal development, which, in layman's terms, is just the right amount of challenge in order to make progress. Too much challenge and the learner's probably going to give up. It's unachievable. So actually having these frameworks of learning objectives can help you to set achievable SMART goals for your learners. And so, as I said, the GCSE Teacher Toolkit is the place to go. You have got in one place all of the following: those 4 sets of learning objectives: young learners, academic English, general English, professional English. It's a searchable database, so you can search for keywords, you can search the proficiency, roughly search the proficiency level to fine-tune your search. You can search by particular skills if you just want to focus on speaking or just writing, etc. So there are lots of searches you can do with learning objectives. You've also got grammar, a database of grammar learning objectives, which are aligned to Global Scale of English, Common European Framework 2. Do I think you are going to find anything surprising in grammar? No. To be honest, grammar generally follows a tried and tested syllabus. However, what you do have in the toolkit is a link from grammar learning objectives to language functions. So if you want to teach a piece of grammar, you will see some ideas of how can I contextualize that within a real life language function. So that's really for inspiration. All of this is for inspiration for teachers, so it can help you identify how to contextualize your grammar teaching. Vocabulary, you have 2 vocabulary databases, one for adults, which is around 36,000 words and phrases, and you have one for young learners, which is smaller, around 3,000 words and phrases. And this is like an online topic dictionary. So everything is divided by topics. And so you can search for words relating to the environment at a B1 level. Okay, and find vocabulary that you can teach to your students. Personally, I wouldn't stick too closely to the leveling. So B1, if my students are B1, I'm going to look at everything from, say, B1 to B2 plus, to be honest. What the database does, the leveling, so it's all leveled from lowest to highest. This is based on 2 parameters. One is how frequent is the word in the language. And secondly, how useful is it for language learning? So all of the words and phrases have been rated by teachers. And so we combine those factors and you can see, okay, my students know these here, but this next level down, they don't know these words. So I'm going to introduce some of this slightly more challenging vocabulary, again, within your zone of proximal development. And then finally, we have a text analyzer, and I'm very conscious of the time. I'm talking way too much. So I'm actually going to skip over this activity of how would you normally judge the level of a text? I'm not going to ask you to type that in because I'm going to show you that now, if you're taking a text from the internet, you can cut and paste it into this text analyzer, give it a title, send it off for analysis, and within a couple of seconds, it will come back and it will give you an approximate level for that text to indicate whether or not it's at an appropriate level for your students. It'll also highlight some words. It's not absolutely perfect. As you can see there, Donald Trump has been highlighted. It highlights words that might be above that actual level. So this came out at 65 to 69. I then took it away and edited it a bit, and I managed to get it down to 57 to 61. So I could simplify it a bit and then run it in the text analyzer again to check. So hopefully, again, this is all about speeding up your workload and helping you to confirm probably, or confirm your judgments, or to give you an idea of the appropriacy for your students. Now, this is an assessment conference, so I don't want to skip the part on assessment, GSE and assessment. When we are assessing language, we really have two parameters that we're assessing. One is quantity. How many things can a learner do in the language? Okay, and for that, we have the learning objectives. The second thing is, how well can they do it? For example, can order food in a restaurant. That's actually leveled quite low. But if you're a more fluent speaker, of course, you can do it using higher level vocabulary, more complex grammar. So we have these two parameters. So what do we have for assessing the quality of our learners' skills? We have two frameworks, again, same website, again, free to download as PDFs, assessment frameworks. And what these are effectively are assessment rubrics. So the type of thing that an examiner for an exam would have in front of them to help them pinpoint the level of a learner's, what a learner's doing in an exam. And you can see here, this is for speaking, it's for young learners, and it's broken down into different categories of spoken production, range of grammar and vocabulary, the accuracy. And I think this is really useful if, well, for example, you're not super familiar with the Common European Framework levels, and you think, well, what exactly is the difference between A2 plus and B1? Take a look at these assessment descriptors, because they've been written by examiners. So you can see, okay, if the accuracy is like this, it's probably more A2 plus rather than, B1, bearing in mind that, at those lower levels, certainly A1, below A1, A1, A2, it will not be 100% accurate, but that's fine. You don't need to be 100% accurate at the lower levels of proficiency. And back to John Hattie, more of his research. Assessment can get a bad rap, can get a bad name for itself, because it's about, judging students, it's about ranking students. Well, it is if it's that kind of achievement test at the end of the year, and then you do nothing with the results apart from say, you pass, you fail, you pass, you fail. Okay, ideally, assessment is more than just passing and failing people. So for John Hattie, the real value lies in, what do you do with this information, and what type of feedback do you give based on this information? And in a paper he wrote for Pearson back in 2015, he was recommending that actually assessment reports, so score reports, needed to really call out explicitly what teachers should be working on next as a result of this assessment and these assessment results. So I'm checking at the, what my students have understood. Here are the results. What do I do next? Which, for me, teachers do it in an informal basis day to day in the classroom. You hear if somebody's struggling and you will remediate, but what do we do with like a more formal assessment? And I think this is where Pearson assessments really have quite a strength, and you're going to be hearing more about these from the experts, from the assessment team in other webinars at this conference. But the proficiency exams now have really rich score reports, which, yes, they give scores and they'll break them down by individual skills and they'll give you descriptions of your language ability. But it's also about, so what? What do I do with this information? And recommending what to do next, and also explicitly linking, if you're using a particular Pearson course, linking to activities within the course that can help you act on the recommendations which are also given. You can do it with other courseware, but of course you have to search for it. That here, this is done for you. And so I think we should probably look to wrap this presentation up. I'll leave you with this visual of the GCSE learning objective. So hopefully what my goal was to demonstrate to you was how the global scale of English is really underpinning everything that Pearson creates from courseware and assessments, so that the two, are not randomly placed together, but they actually fit together. They're underpinned by the same learning objectives and the same proficiency scale. And so with that, I think we can go to questions. Sophia?
Hello, yes. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, we've got some good questions here.
Let's hope I've got some good answers.
Let's see, I'm sure you do. Here's one that's interesting. Why is the scale from 10 to 90 and not from 1 to 100?
That's not the first time I've had that question, I will say. 1 to 100 would be logical, wouldn't it? So why have we made it 10 to 90? I will let you 400 people into a little secret. Behind the scenes, it is 1 to 100. However, below 10 and above 90, the margin of error is too big to assign a proficiency level with any confidence or accuracy. So actually, we have to lose the ends of the scale because they're too unreliable. I hope I haven't shattered any illusions there, but yeah, behind the scenes it is there, but below 10, the difference between a 7 and a 9, it's too unreliable.
Amazing how much of a science it is. So another question, how does the GCSE promote equity and inclusion despite the existence of language variation? So how does the GCSE account for and standardize different users of English from different places in the world?
Okay, wow, that's a great question. What I would say is, rather like the Common European Framework, so the Common European Framework is completely language neutral, okay? So, it was created so that people could compare levels in French and Spanish and Italian, etc. Now, the global scale of English has been built out for English because that's what we specialize in, and because we only had to focus on English, and because we carried out our research with teachers of English. However, the actual framework, if you look at those learning objectives, they are for language functions, can give simple directions. There is nothing that says in a British accent, using American vocabulary, in a South African dialect. I mean, so actually it will incorporate, no matter what variety of English you use, you would still be at that proficiency level. Yeah, that's a great question. I have to say, I have never had that question before. So hats off to whoever asked that. You had me thinking there.
Yeah, no, good answer. How about this one? IELTS, how does it, if you can give any insight into this, how IELTS factors into the GSE and the CEFR? Or the other way around, really. The other way around.
Yeah, how does it link with IELTS? Obviously, there are links with IELTS, and if somebody is training IELTS students, then I would recommend you go to the website that we quoted endlessly, pearsonenglish.com/GSE. Look in the section under research and expertise, and there you will find a white paper which explains the alignment between IELTS, TOEFL, and the Global Scale of English and Common European Framework. So we have done quite a number of studies with particularly IELTS to show that correlation. So if your goal is you need an IELTS, I don't know, 7.5, then actually if you can still use Global Scale of English for academic English to get there, because you can see, okay, 7.5 is equivalent to this on the Global Scale of English. My learners are here, so I know I've got to cover this part of the syllabus.
That's great. Okay, yes, that's clear. Is the GSE only useful if I'm using Pearson courseware or assessments?
No, not at all. As I said, it's recognised by non-Pearson organisations. And it is a standalone framework, language, English neutral. You can use it whatever your circumstances. The only thing I would say is we've created tools and resources to help teachers with lesson planning, with assessment, and of course you can do that. But having been a teacher, I know that can be quite time consuming. So if you want an off-the-shelf solution, then at the moment, at least, Pearson is the only publisher that uses the Global Scale of English, even though everybody else could use it, but nobody is using it as yet.
How about very young learners, pre-primary school learners? Do we have anything for them? Does the GSE apply to them?
Okay, so in the teacher toolkit, you will find the primary set. Okay, again, I'll let you in on a little secret. We are currently developing pre-primary, and I hope that will be made public before the end of this year. So yes, it is, because increasingly English is being taught at a younger and younger age group, and we were finding that actually the primary learning objectives were a little bit problematic for pre-primary. So we are, don't tell any of the competition though, but we are working on pre-primary.
Brilliant. Okay. Another question. Someone's asked about progress. Sometimes a learner can be learning for years and find themselves at a plateau. How can the GSE help with that?
Yeah, so I think that really, and that plateau is inevitably B1, maybe A2 plus B1. So as I hopefully showed, the plateau, in a way, it's a perception. So the perception is I'm not making any progress, and you probably are. The chances are you are. It's just you can't feel it, you can't see it, and there's no tangible evidence for it. If you're using the Global Scale of English, even without using a formal assessment, of course, the formal assessments are very useful and you should go and order those and buy them now. But even if you're not using the formal assessment, I know, for example, of a case study in, I think it was Japan, where the teacher used a set of learning objectives at the beginning of the year and asked the students, you know, just rate your confidence in being able to do these in English, and then took them away and obviously used that as part of planning for the year, and then gave them exactly the same list at the end of the year and saw that the confidence rating had increased, and just gave them back, well, that's what you did 9 months ago, and this is what you've done today. So you might not feel it, but you're actually more confident in these particular language functions. So that's just one way in which I'm sure people on the call are way more creative than me, but that was just one thing that comes to mind, in how you can use GSE just to demonstrate you're making progress. Stick with it. And it is true, there does seem to come a breakthrough moment where then you suddenly seem to fly. But I think around that A2 plus B1 level, little tricks like that can be useful.
Yeah. Okay. The text analyzer that you just showed us, can you use that tool to grade, or can teachers use that tool to grade their students' written work?
Obviously, there's nobody looking over your shoulder saying you cannot do this. I would caution using the text analyzer in that way. Somebody once said, there's nothing artificial about artificial intelligence. You know, the system has been programmed, and the text analyzer has been programmed using native speaker written texts from fiction, non-fiction, articles, blogs, you name it, but for a first language speaker. So for example, if you put student work into the text analyzer and there were grammatical errors or there were spelling mistakes, the system has not been trained to recognize that it's a spelling mistake. It would think that it was a really difficult word above the level. So actually, the worse your text is, it may end up being rated higher because it just thinks that this vocabulary is much higher because you can't even spell the name or something. So short answer, well, that was a very long answer, but short answer is don't use it for that. Just use it to rate texts.
Okay, yeah, good. Here's a question. Do you happen to know when the Council of Europe will release or publish a Common European Framework for Young Learners?
So in the companion volume, they have done something specific for young learners. I'm trying to remember, I think there's some recategorization of existing learning objectives, but also some new learning objectives. So if you're interested in young learners, go to the website and look at the companion volume, because there is something for the younger learners there.
That's great. Okay. We have questions about the web pages in which our audience can find more information. We're sending out after this session, actually towards the end of this week, you'll receive your certificate, a recording of the session, and a link to the resource rucksack, which is a free compilation of resources that covers resources for all of our assessment products, the GSE, and lots of different things that you'll hear about during this this series. So look out for that. Probably got time for one more little question. Where was it? I was looking at one. I've lost it. It was a really good one. Oh. Yeah, sorry, I've lost it. Oh, here's it. No, it was, no, I've got it. It was just kind of in a nutshell. We say that our courseware is aligned to the GSE, and you've been through it very thoroughly in your talk. But can you just summarise very sort of succinctly how exactly a courseware title, like for example, Top Notch, is aligned to the GSE, and how that, you know, what it means for that, for that a teacher using that title?
How long have I got?
30 seconds.
Actually, you will, so the authors use the learning objectives to write the to write the content. They're often focused on the end point, like that ultimate goal, the speaking or writing activity that is at the end of a unit. We then go in and we map the other component parts to the GCSE learning objectives, and every major title, fingers crossed, but I'm pretty sure every major title comes with a free GCSE booklet, which will tell you all the learning objectives per unit, per page, which have been used in that level of your course. And they're usually available on the course website.
Fabulous. That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mike.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.
For your talk, and thank you to everybody who's joined us today. Please do check out the rest of the programme. Our next session is next Tuesday. There it is. That's the URL. Head to the blog and check out the Assessment Summer Camp programme. So yeah, there's lots to look forward to. And yeah, have a lovely day. Thanks.
Yeah, and I'm just going to have a look in there because I'm doing another session later. So can I? In fact, I'm doing two, aren't I? So I can plug those. So look for me for a fireside chat at the end and something on
Summer Slide, was it?
Summer Slide, exactly. Would love to see all of you at those sessions as well. And it won't just be me. I'm presenting with one of my colleagues, so you won't just have to listen to me. But thank you for today. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.